Hello and welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Heavyweights podcast. I'm Ashton Hines, one of your hosts, alongside my good friend and real estate mentor and real estate partner these days, just trying to work side by side, not officially on paper partner, but just more and more every day trying to walk houses and make decisions together. Tavis Westbrook. What's up, Tavis?
What up? What up? Yep, absolutely. And we are in the trenches together, brother. We're definitely talking a lot more than previous months, previous years. So.
For sure. And we're recording late. This is the first time we've recorded close to 10 o'clock. I turn into a pumpkin at 10:15. I'm definitely a morning person. And so Tabitha's leaving town and she's taking the computer and your studio set up. And so we're getting a session in. And but yeah, you've been super, super busy. I actually drove to Maybank today, way out in Cedar Creek Lake, an hour and a half or whatever, hour and 40 minutes, whatever it ended up being today, to go look at a trailer for one of our contractors. And definitely I should have done a little bit more research. You know, I looked up the Google Maps, I looked up the tax, I texted him, I called him. English is not his first language. However, he's very proficient. And we ask him several questions. He mentions like, hey, I need to sell this. I'll let you make a lot of money, just help me out here. I need to get rid of it. Okay. And so we're kind of talking about the rental comps and this. And so I'm like, I'll just go look at it. And I told him like, hey, can I go look at it? He's like, yeah, here's the code. So I get out there, drive an hour and a half. I'm walking around. It's like this new trailer. And I do a video. I'm like, man, that's a nice trailer. I get back, I'm sending stuff to you, and I'm just looking online, and I put in the address, and it shows up on the MLS. I'm like, what the heck? It's listed? It had been listed for 156 days. I'm like, Callie, how do you not one time mention that you have it listed with an agent? And I don't know how I didn't just search it on the MLS. I just started doing all the tax and looking at it from Google Maps just to be like, where is this place? So. Sure. Anyway, there's still a chance that, I guess it could be some sort of wholesale deal, or I don't know, maybe his listing agreement's going to be up soon or something. I'm not sure. He's slow to get back. So I don't
know what he's got himself into that, or what the intent was when he bought it. It's not a very old deal. I mean, the trailer's in really good shape,
Yeah.
And so I was looking at it kind of as a rental, saying, what do the numbers need to be for that? And then I thought about it for you. And, I know that the rental market in that area is pretty high, right? It's in pretty good demand.
It seemed decent. So, yeah. I was surprised with just how much traffic was going on out there. There's just a lot going on. It did have
a permanent foundation on it. So it does technically qualify for, Fannie Mae type financing.
Yeah, the neighborhood sort of reminds you why HOAs can be handy, because there was seemingly little to no rules. The neighbors were not the cleanest people. There's a lot of trash in a lot of the lots adjoining it. They could be cleaned up. I don't know that anyone would be mad at you if you cleaned up the old recliner that they threw back there, but then they had built these mini sort of tiny homes, like very small 3-2, all siding type homes. There was some sort of builder that you could tell that they were putting these up out there. So yeah, just kind of a different, and then you would meander into this one where it was kind of the classic, someone knows sort of the building trades and they're just sort of adding on a wing every once in a while. And there's these like really wide houses, and half of them are sort of like dried in with sheetrock, or I get just weird phases of construction on different houses and people living there. So it was an adventure going out there. I hope it works out, but doing some demo work over in Garland for you this week. I was really happy with how that went. It went a lot cleaner than some of my other stuff. We were too efficient. We took out too many baseboards, actually. That sent you into a panic for a little while trying to figure that out. But
it's not the first time that's happened. but just it creates another step, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about that, and then the person that has to do that step has been one of our
MIA.
weakest links. Well, I got a hold of him finally. He went to the hospital.
Oh no.
He had something going on with his pancreas,
Ooh.
and he's got a pretty bad infection, and so he's on a now liquid diet. They're keeping him overnight.
Mm.
So yeah, no, he's been in the hospital since last night. So
Well,
um,
I'm glad you got in touch with him.
yeah,
But his MO for years has been he'll just ghost you for a week. So it's hard to
right.
know, is something really wrong? So I'm
I
glad.
know.
I hope he does get better. Man, he's a good guy. But yeah, he's there's definitely days and weeks you just won't hear from him, and so it's like, man, what's going
Yeah,
on? Um, so yeah, we got a lot of demo happening, a lot of work happening, trying to track down some lots for a customer, trying to find an off market lot for him. I'm going tomorrow to show a rental. I got a potential client off of the open house this last week at Primrose. We had a ton of
yeah,
people come by, and
it's awesome.
randomly this guy came by and wanted a rental, and it's like, okay, so we're going to go check that out tomorrow. So that's what I got going, and I know you were sharpening your pencil on a final bid of a house over in Willow Bend, which would be an amazing project.
Yep.
So hopefully
Yeah, it was
that comes to fruition.
one you walked while I was
Yep.
somewhere.
Yeah,
I
you were
don't
out of
know. I
town. I
don't know
don't
where I was
remember,
at that point in time,
Guatemala
but
maybe, but yeah, I walked that one. I met the client, ran the numbers, and all that stuff. So that'll be cool to see if that really comes through. That'll be a really neat project.
well, and what's amazing with that, and that's just a lesson to be learned that you've got to look at opportunities kind of open book, right? So you walked it. The seller was very proficient. In fact, he gave me a copy again when I met him the other day of all of the details and
Yeah.
all the stuff he's done. Well, it turns out he's the original owner, so he bought it from
Mm.
the builder in 1988. So he's there's a lot of pride in the home, and
Yep.
actually, surprisingly, from some of the last homes that we've been walking through, this one is very clean, very well organized. There's not a lot of clutter. He doesn't own a lot of stuff. It's him and his son living there. Um, I think his wife passed away within recent years, and so this is finally just getting to a chapter. He's 76 years old, but ultimately this place is just it's pretty pristine, but it's just a time capsule from 1988 for the most
Yep.
part. But he's kept up with all of the major systems, and he's got service accounts. So every sales guy loves him because he's got some big brands that he uses for
Yep.
plumbing maintenance and
He
just
got the
all these
name brand
service
windows
contracts.
when they came
Oh
through.
gosh, yeah.
He
Um,
just resurfaced the pool, so he's done a lot of the core.
he's done a
It,
lot of the really expensive stuff for this home, and it's a big house.
yeah.
It's 3,500 square feet, and but it's dated. So when we're now talking about bringing it up to date and updating it and getting it close to $1 million property, it costs money to get it there. But you
Mm-hmm.
actually did really well in your budget when you pencil whipped it, and you were in at
Came really
$40
close.
a foot. And I think my actual budget tonight, and this includes staging, which I built in $3,500 for that, and then also photos for $500 because that is a cost
Mm-hmm.
that you've got to think about. So with that all being said, it was $41 and change.
I said
So
40. Yeah.
yeah,
And I was doing a very rudimentary. I was going more off of feel of, okay, this is a big house. We can't, even though we're doing a lot, you kind of have to sort of start sliding down a little bit per foot because it's so
sure,
big.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I was really happy when you started talking the numbers. I'm like, that's like I looked at my spreadsheet. I was like, that's what I got there. That's what I got there.
Well, and it's kind of wild because there's a trade off with certain things, right? Like one of the big expenses is it doesn't have a pool heater. He took it
Mm,
out, said rats were getting into it. He's replaced it twice before. He doesn't use it, so he didn't want to deal with it. Okay, well, we're going to push the value and sell it. Somebody's going to want a pool heater, right?
mm.
So it's $3,500, and he updated all the appliances. He actually had Sub-Zero fridge and stainless steel appliances. So that's something I can save and I don't have to replace. But he had a glass cooktop instead of a gas
Mm-hmm.
cooktop, so I'm going to go ahead and budget for a new glass, or a gas cooktop.
So from a
Um,
design standpoint, just thinking about that house, and we've kind of gone through this. We're going through this over in Garland a little bit.
yeah.
This is a high molding. This was the era of a lot of
Mm-hmm.
trim and molding.
Yep.
So how will you handle that? Do you work with it, or do you try to clean it up some, because it is a little bit over the top?
PAINT.
Color
No.
washing. No, color
Yeah,
drenching. That's what
I
they're
mean
calling it. Color
that's my
drenching.
goal. That's my goal right now. Right,
Yeah.
is to paint and play with colors and
Yeah.
make it sexy. The funny thing is panels have come back. So
Yeah.
I mean, people are getting a little crazier with a little bit more design. Primrose, in fact, we made a cool accent wall, with a design with 1x2s. But I mean, the paneling, is coming back. I mean, it's funny. I mean, now it's painted versus the ash wood and stained wood, and this living
Yeah.
room is still the original stained wood.
Mm-hmm.
But we can make it nice. I mean, it's going to be nice, and that area is extremely strong. I mean, average days on market, $900,000. Average days on market is 11 days right now
Wow.
in this market. So, hey.
Well, I hope it works out. I mean, and it kind of goes back down to part of the deal is you're able to be really patient with them, and this is how I was able to get my second flip when I bought from a guy who wanted to move to assisted living, but he was doing it on his own timing, and I think he needed something like 6 months. He's like, "Hey, just give me time. I'm figuring it out, but are you still interested?" And every once in a while he would call me. He's like, "Hey, are you still interested? You still interested?" Yep, I'm in. I'm in.
Yeah.
So being able to, it's not always about the last dime that goes into their pocket for them. Sometimes it's just convenience, knowing that they can check that box and they have someone that they know is going to close, and you've worked with this agent before. And so it really all works together, and you're solving this problem for this guy so he can move on in a way that's smooth, and he doesn't have to get the house ready to put on the MLS and all that stuff. So yeah, I think
Right.
it's a classic example of solving problems for people. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about that. Speaking of design, well, I was going to bring this up later. Let's just talk about it now. So, you're using the color of the year over at Dabney, which is sort of
Yep.
this. It's not dusty rose. It's almost like a deep dusty rose. When like
Yeah.
the
It's almost a
early
mauve. I mean, it's a mauve
2000s,
color.
but yeah, it's like a darker mauve. Now, when you did the
Terracotta
bathroom,
mauve. Yeah.
when you did the bathroom at that house, I'm forgetting what area it was in. You did a small
Wiley.
bathroom. Was that same color or?
That was a different color. Yeah. It was in Wiley. And I actually just used that color over at Shady Hill as well in the guest bedroom downstairs on the accent
Oh, that's
wall. I
right.
used that
Mm-hmm.
same color that I used in Wiley. This is a little different color that I'm going to try out, but it's in the dining room and it does have the molding, and it's kind of an inset little area. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be cool. Today I was over there and I did all my counting for. I did my takeoffs for my light fixtures
Hardware.
and
Mhm.
all that stuff. And I was like, okay, we were talking yesterday doing the Sputnik in that dining room, and I still think that would look cool. But then I'm like, okay, do I flip it? Because there's actually a few more chandeliers than typically,
Yeah.
like Primrose, there wasn't a lot, right? And last couple houses I've done, there wasn't a lot of chandeliers. And so I was like looking at it and I was like, okay, should I do like kind of flip it and go with a boho look, and do the weaved, you know, the weaved light fixture like we did at Fargo, and that's a cool look too.
Yeah. In
So,
the coffee area.
so I
Mm-hmm.
haven't, I gotta think on that, but anyways, yeah, no, it's already coming together really well. I'm really excited for your work that you did over there, and today it was nice to walk into a clean property, went through the irrigation system and checked it all out, and they just had it off, but it was actually in really good shape. It's a couple heads, and we're doing cleanup, and it's supposed to start tile work tomorrow, and
Nice.
we'll
Yeah,
keep
that's coming
moving.
together super, super fast.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
and
just happy with how all the the demo went. I worked a lot cleaner there. I did electrocute myself slightly the other day. In fairness to me, the
Yeah.
electrician did come in later. And I'm like, hey, can you look at that light? To me, that should be off, and
Yeah.
it's not. So after that, I went to Lowe's and got a tester.
You haven't
And
done demo until you've shocked yourself
oh
at
my
least
god!
once.
Luckily, it wasn't the dryer unit. It was the light in the master. But
Yeah.
so I went and got a tester, and then I didn't know they had these little tools. Did you know they have the little GFCI outlet tools that you push the button and it trips the GFCI?
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
know you could do that. So then everything in line after that is dead, which is
And it
super
shuts
cool.
it down. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and skip to this house. I went ahead and shared the screen. And one of the reasons I was going to talk about this is from a design perspective. And since we're on design, let's just stay there. But
Yeah.
so I like this house. What are these things called? These up and down, these vertical stripping, kind of almost like the white oak that you did at Shady Hill. But these are
Yep.
panels. These are
The,
prefab panels.
yeah. Slat wall is kind of a nickname that we have for it.
Yeah, it's
It's
really cool.
basically 1x2s with a gap, a 3/4 inch gap.
And they've painted the
Sometimes it's
backing board
bigger
black.
in between. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
they
you can
painted the
order it
backing
that
board
way
black.
too.
Yeah, so these are ordered. These are prefab. But so I really like the look. This house is not cheap. I think it's a $2.8 million house over in Lucas, but they almost overused it. It's like
Yeah.
it's everywhere. And then the other thing I noticed while I was looking through this, and this made me think of you. Actually, these chairs, the blended wood and brushed gold chairs, are really popular right now. But to me, the scale of their chandeliers is off. And we actually
Mm-hmm.
had this conversation the other day when you were talking about doing some things at Dabney and that Sputnik light. I was like, would it be too big? And the supplier that you have, they kind of have like the small version, the entry in like kind of the little entry light. And then they have their dining room chandelier, but they don't seem to have a medium one, which would probably be best in
Right.
this area. But scale, I think we've talked about it a little bit before, but I do feel like that's a fine art. I believe is getting scale figured out, sourcing materials that really fit a room without completely breaking the budget. And I just think this is a beautiful house, but two things: I think they completely overused the slat wall. It's just everywhere, and then the
Yep.
scale of their lights just seems to be a little bit off, which it doesn't ruin the house. uh, I will show you the bathroom that I do feel like is kind of odd. So this is another just a design question. If you're wanting to look this up, it's 808 Inverness Lane in Lucas. Really cool house. But so let's get to the primary bathroom. They do have the butler's kitchen, so all that really neat. But let's get to the primary bathroom. And my question to you is, how many tiles would you ever dare to use in one bathroom? Because they
Oh my
said,
gosh.
look, we got this. One for the floor, one on the backsplash of the tub, and then a
Mm-hmm.
highlight one across the middle, which is very different. There's three. Then you can see a completely different one in the shower. That's four. There's a chance that this one over here in the closet or whatever this little wet area is the same. It's just a little darker, but there's also a chance that that's a fifth one.
Yeah.
One,
Well,
two,
I think
three.
it's three because they've got inside the shower. It looks like it matches the floor. They
You think
just
that's the
ran it.
same one? It just looks darker in there.
Well, they
Okay.
just ran it horizontally too instead of
Oh, they
vertically.
changed the direction. Okay, yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
call there. So they did the
Um,
floor and the shower the same, but they changed the direction. It looks a little bit
and there's
different.
the slat wall again. So
I know. Yeah.
to me. So again, we've talked about this before. Residential design sometimes I feel like sometimes designers and people go just a little bit overboard. Like and I think it's because of the amount of selections that are there. I don't know. People feel like they've got to kind of go crazy sometimes, and I
Mm-hmm.
think I have to like take a step back sometimes when I feel like I'm being too boring. I have to kind of take a step back and think about the last luxury hotel I was in, or the last
Yeah.
resort I was in, or the last 5-star restaurant that's new and upcoming, and think through those styles because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times those styles are simple. Like
Yeah.
there's not a lot there, but they might have a little pop of a cool vanity or some gold or a light fixture. But I mean, the tile in a lot of cases is very
Understated.
simplistic, right? and
Yeah.
it looks great, but it's like it's consistent, and it kind of paints the background, if you will.
Well, that was so there's literally a
Oh my
slat wall in
gosh, yeah.
almost every room,
They
and
got a shipment from China, I think. I think they
they
bought
felt
a
obligated to use all of it.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was the other
There it
design
is again in
question.
that room.
I know, it's like literally everywhere. But so from a design boredom question, when you make a decision and okay, I feel like you kind of maybe change up a little bit of something every time.
Hmm.
When do you decide to completely phase something out? Like I'll use this as an example. Your LED mirrors right now, very
Hmm.
popular. You're using them all the time. You've used them for a couple of years, but I would imagine there's going to be a time when you're kind of like, look, that just reeks of the early 2020s. I'm not going to do that anymore for a while. So
Sure.
how do you make that decision? Do you read a lot of magazines? Do you look at a lot of Instagram? Do you walk a lot of open houses or model homes? Like when do you decide I'm not doing gold faucets anymore? I'm not doing LED mirrors anymore,
Yeah.
or whatever it is.
I don't know. I think just when it gets to a point where it's maybe too popular, or um, I don't know. That's a good question. I think that I end up I like kind of being progressive to some degree, and like I was mixing metals, last couple years, and that used to be a no-no, and now everyone's talking about mixing metals,
Right.
right? And what I mean by that is you have maybe black hardware on your doors, and then black bathroom hardware, and then you use gold faucets,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's different things that are complementary to each other. But I don't know. The LED mirrors have progressed so much in the last 10 years. Like I was putting LED mirrors in 2014-15, but
Mm.
there was very limited selection, and in fact, the Custer house that we've talked about before, those were custom built LED
Mm.
mirrors. I found a guy that custom made them, and he built them and put them together, and
Mm.
they were really cool. Now they were popular in the hotel world, and I
Right.
guess that's again going back to that concept. In the hotels, they're still very popular. I mean, they work
Right.
well for makeup. It's simplistic. I think that's what I like about it. Like especially in a bathroom with a small 7-foot ceiling or an 8-foot ceiling, if you can eliminate the fixture above the mirror and then just do a nice clean LED mirror,
Mm-hmm.
the progression has gone from just a frameless LED mirror with two slots or cutouts to now you can do a framed mirror with the LED strip built into the frame. And
Mm.
when the mirror's off, you don't notice it, just looks like a regular mirror. And when the mirror's on, it's bright. And if you notice
Yeah.
that, that's what we did at Shady Hill. That's what we did at Primrose as well. And so it could be a detailed mirror with a frame without a light on if you choose to turn the light off, right?
Yeah.
So I just think they're clean and it take up less wall space, and but you've asked me now on these last two jobs that we're currently working on, Richardson and Garland. You said, are we doing LED mirrors? And the answer is no, because I don't want to spend the money to
Mm-hmm.
move the
Outlet.
electrical around. So that's sometimes is my decision. But here's the thing: most of the time, I'm going to change the bathroom mirrors from the builder grade to a designer mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So the benefit of an LED mirror is it benefits you. You get two for one. You get a
Yeah.
light and a mirror in
Well,
one,
and
right? For,
even
versus
though
a
we see it a
separate.
lot, yeah, even though we see it a lot, I still think it's rare enough to where when people see it, it looks like a really cool upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all right, let's real quick. This is a 6308 Indian Creek over in Fort Worth. This is a $9 million house. It's just a very unique $9 million house. It's a low slung, long ranch, and I think really neat staging and art. Like this is extremely unique and very well done. Like a professional designer for sure did
Yeah.
this. Uh, and so, but the design, I was like, man, I can never imagine. So we're looking at the kitchen right now,
Yeah.
and this is the first kitchen I've ever seen where you have your stove and you have your Ventahood and all this stuff, and there's literally no upper cabinets, there's no upper shelves, nothing. There's two sconces, and it's all tiled. It's very interesting, but I don't know that I would do it. It just seems like
Yeah.
It's not that they're lacking for storage or
I mean,
anything, but
yeah,
just
I was
from
gonna say, it looks like there's a lot of storage space there on the
yeah,
sides, maybe, and then
I
maybe the
know.
picture to the left, which we can't see as well. But I mean, it's a very clean, cool look. Like it to
Yeah,
me, that looks like a very resort,
almost
or
Airbnb.
clubhouse,
Yeah,
clubhouse feel, right? In a way.
yeah. But this house, like, please, I know sometimes I say this, but
Wow, look at those
6308
windows.
Indian Creek
Yeah,
Drive. This is a very unique house, and the style is super well done. It's not really necessarily my style. It has more of an effeminate flair, but it's got almost like a
yeah,
coastal feel. It's got a lot of whitewashed boards on the ceiling. It's a 1963 house, and they've kept some of the original stuff, I'm sure. Uh,
yeah. That
but their
view, man.
design,
How many acres is that thing on?
uh, not barely half. So this must
Oh,
just be a very
okay.
prestigious neighborhood over in Fort Worth. I'm
Yeah.
not as familiar
I
over
mean,
there, but
this is a perfect example. If you guys go look this thing up, that this is a really cool example of kind of what I call retrovation, right?
mm,
Like a resto mod in the automobile world.
mm-hmm,
This is like a retrovation. Like this is taking the character from the original architecture
like right here.
and
Yeah.
working with it, but then putting a new modern twist on it and still keeping the integrity of the design. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is done really well.
Yeah.
I'm
This
very
is
impressed with this.
very interesting style. Yeah. So 6308 Indian Creek Drive in Fort Worth. Check it out. You will thank me later. All right. So we kind of went in reverse today. We're doing our own little version of things today. So let's go ahead and get over into a little bit of a market update. So, like we talked about last week, the interesting statistic is that the new listings have gone down. And I looked back for 10 years and I tried to find this little period of time from February to March, and it has not happened in the last 10 years. So there have been several times when from March to April, there's a dip. There's a couple in there, March to April dips, but a January to February dip has not happened. And so that's just, nothing earth earth shattering, but it is interesting that for whatever reason we had a dip in the new listings. The thing that has improved since last time that we talked about is the percentage of overall price is now up on the uptick of, we had dipped down into the 93%, which means there was a lot of discounts happening, people having a hard time pricing. That is on an upward trend. And so again, I do feel like that has to do with the consistency in the interest rate. And now we're past the election, consistency in news, although of course it's volatile, and depending on who you're listening to, the world's ending or it's getting way better. And let's see here. We had 4,800. I'm thinking back to my other chart. We had 4,800 price reductions, which is well over 10% of the overall market.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big jump there from the last time we saw it. Our days on market is up at 72. Units for sales 39,000.
And
And
again, this is entire MLS, guys. So
entire
like,
MLS. Yeah.
if you go to the
Collin
three
County.
main counties that we do business in, they've been pretty consistent. There
Yeah.
hasn't been too much of a shift over the last couple of months.
We see these little mini dips here, but
Yeah.
yeah. And then let's see, sales price. That was the last one. So we are going up a little bit. The average sales price entire MLS right now is 373. Collin County's 480, and it has a pretty decent little jump there. Denton County's downward trending, but Collin County is jumping up. So maybe that bodes well for the Willow Bend house that you're about to take down, which would be really cool. All right, quick little look at the market. Let's take a look at a little bit of news. And I thought this was a cool article from Dallas Morning News. I had never heard of this. Over in Allen, I guess they are adopting a rule that several other cities, including Dallas, and I want to say, let's see what they say, Fort Worth, Grand Prairie. Basically, the city keeps track of crime statistics for certain apartment complexes. And if you dip below a certain line, they enact a policy where the owner of the property has to take these classes, anti-crime classes,
Oh, wow.
and basically have, it's called going through a mandatory crime reduction program. and they have to pay for it. It's something like $2,500. You kind of, you're basically raising the red flag on your own complex, and I guess the police probably spend more time there, and they're doing everything they can to get you back to where it's considered safe. So I had never heard of this, but I guess Dallas, Fort Worth,
Wow.
Grand Prairie has it. Allen has it. So I thought that was a
That's
bit kind of
smart.
an interesting program. Yeah, pretty smart there. Let's see. A Plano firm plans to buy another 21 land for another 2,100 homes. We've talked about this other. They bought this up near Pilot Point, and Pilot
Okay.
Point is just north of Little Elm, a little ways
Yeah, north of 380.
north of 380. So just everything's growing that way. It's kind of boxed in by the lake there, but I did. We I actually had a house under contract at one point up in Pilot Point, and it never cleared title, and so it went back to the wholesaler. I really like that area, and it's super strong growth. So it's just more and more and more. I mean, 2,000 home neighborhood is on its way up to Pilot Point, and all the land between here and there will eventually fill in.
Mm-hmm.
And the let's see, okay, yeah. This is we've talked a lot about the Mavs. So a couple weeks ago, we talked about how the ownership of the Mavericks had purchased a large lot of land over in Irving. Then Irving moved to change the zoning on it to include casinos and hotels and all this stuff. We're like, well, yeah, Mavs are moving to Irving. Well, this week in the news, Dallas, the city of Dallas says, not so fast. We're doing everything we can to keep them. And the CEO is like, yeah, we really want to stay in Dallas. We really would love to stay in Dallas, although they already own land in Irving. So
Sure.
I think that's a little bit
I don't
weird.
know. Yeah, it's interesting, and I was reading through that as well, and I think that I mean, if you think about it, besides the Dallas Stars, I mean, there's not many. The Dallas, the city of Dallas is definitely. I mean, you still have teams within the county, but Dallas is definitely going to lose a good amount of tax dollars and market share
Yeah.
if they do move that arena, right? So um, that's I can understand the pushback, and maybe we've talked about it before. Mark Cuban's been accumulating land on the south side of 35, where the practice facility is, and he owns several buildings and an amount of land. I don't know how much he owns, but he's entitled a tremendous amount of property there on the south side of 35.
Yeah. And they were talking about, the CEO of the Mavs actually built a $1.2 billion development for another team. I can't remember. Maybe it was the, Golden State Warriors, I believe. He used to work with them. And I don't want to lie, but somewhere he kind of went through this process with another team, and that's one of the reasons he was hired, because they in 2031 is when the AAC lease is up, and so they're committed to being there. He says they're committed to being there through the 31 season. Now, this is the kicker, I think, right here. The most immediate goal, Welt said, is within 12 months identifying and securing a 30 to 50 acre site for an arena and a quote full-blown entertainment district. I just don't know how all of a sudden they're going to create that out of nowhere in the middle of Dallas. I mean, I guess it's
Well,
possible, but
I mean, they did it here with American Airlines, because at that point in time, before American Airlines was built, it was all industrial.
yeah,
Um, prior to that happening, right?
yeah.
And none of those apartment buildings or and any of that stuff was there either.
And it may come down to which city gives them the most incentives, but
Absolutely.
I kind of feel, the Adelson family, the Dumont family, who's already made several missteps with the fandom, doesn't seem to really care about the fans themselves. I think they will probably go to where they have the biggest opportunity to grow their brand and their
Mm-hmm.
hotels and their business. And if they see that to being over in Irving, they will for sure go over there. I don't think they have any
Right.
loyalty to to the city of Dallas. Now, maybe they have to play nice and say, "Oh yeah, we'd really love for it to be here." Just like the Neiman Marcus people, like, "Yeah, we'd love for this to work out," and then they're like, "Well, actually, no, we're out. See ya."
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I sort of find it to be far fetched that all of a sudden all these developers and landowners, they're going to come together, sell, several blocks worth of buildings to make a 50-acre continuous site. Then they agree to, yep, this is what we're going to do. We're going to build it right here. Could it be done? Absolutely. Maybe it is, like over by the K. Bailey Hutchison or the old Reunion or somewhere in there that they can figure some things out. But that is what they're efforting to do. The Lord knows they could use some help in the PR department. They have 8 players dressing out right now to try to limp their way through games. I don't.
It's insane.
It's awful. They did. Somehow they beat the Spurs the other day. I still don't. They're playing tonight, but I don't know how they beat the Spurs. So a big acquisition happened on the national front. A huge acquisition happened. Rocket Mortgage and Redfin joined teams. There was a $1.75 billion acquisition. Rocket Mortgage bought Redfin. And of course, everyone always thinks that everything that happens is going to really change the landscape of real estate. This is a pretty big deal because you have Rocket Mortgage, which is a huge mortgage lender. And then you have Redfin that already has its own agents. It's like a Zillow, but they have their own agents. So they're starting to stack up a pretty decent vertical in the real estate world. And so they think that it could be a more of a one-stop shop for people. Go look for homes, find an agent to show you a home, list your old home, and then get the lending side of things figured out. And I think they may have even said that Redfin owns a title. They may have a title arm already. So they've got a lot of stuff figured out. It's a pretty big deal, but of course we always hear that the sky is falling. And Keller Williams actually, what were the details on? They took on investment for the first time ever, didn't they?
They did. Yeah. I don't have it in front of me. That the consensus is that they took it on for to basically grow in a technical way. And that was the main reason they took on the investments that way. Gary Keller for many, many years has said that he would, never go public with the company. And I don't necessarily think that it's going to go public, but the investor that they took on is quite the giant. But again, I don't have it in front of me to go through all the details with you. And it's a big chatter over the last, couple weeks since that news came out. I think it's good. I mean, at the end of the day, look, when you look at, cloud-based real estate companies, EXP being one of the first of its kind, and with the profit share model, and not even profit share, I guess revenue share, and then you've got all these other companies now that have followed. Right, Real is behind them. You've got Compass, which is a very technical, company, cloud-based company. And Keller Williams is kind of the dinosaur, right? That's been around for a long time, great at training, but it's known as the brick and mortar real estate team or brick and mortar real estate company. And the running joke for many years is, hey, start at Keller Williams, they'll train you, and then come over here.
Right.
And so that's been a running joke for many years. Keller Williams is a great company. Obviously, that's where we hang our real estate license, and you as well. And I think it's a great, it's a great company. But the canvas is ever changing, and in order to do that, you've got to be willing to change. If you're not changing, you're dying, right? So, I think that's the consensus to it. Is you've got to do things sometimes.
It's not an indication of
tough
something going wrong.
Yeah,
I think that was kind of the fear. Is like, what does this mean? Does this mean something's off? But yeah, it seems like they're investing in infrastructure and technology and trying to take a leap there. So one last story here. We've talked about the lack of overall inventory in real estate, and a recent study solidified that. They said in general, the United States is 3.8 million units short of meeting demand.
Wow.
And it says at last year's construction pace, it would take 7.5 years to close the housing gap. They broke it down. Evidently in the South, we are more than keeping up. We're going to close the gap, I believe they said, in like 4 years. But for whatever reason, let me find this here. The Midwest said, okay, meanwhile, and so South, it would take about 4 years, something like that. Regionally, if 2024 trends continue, the South would be able to close the housing gap in 3 years. Okay. Meanwhile, the West would take 6.5 years to close the gap. The Midwest would take 41 years to close their gap, and the Northeast would see essentially no improvement.
Wow.
And they were talking about how the Northeast is landlocked and it's just super expensive to build new developments, and that's understandable. The Midwest is sort of I don't know what would make that make sense. They seem to have enough land. It seems to be relatively cheap. They always pop up on some of the more reasonable priced places to get into rental real estate. So maybe the workforce isn't there. I don't know why all of a sudden it would take 3 years to figure it out in the South, but 41 years to figure it out in the Midwest. That's quite the difference there. But yeah, 3.8 million units. So they're not going to stop the building anytime soon. It does say that there's a lot of movement in the political realm to really reduce the friction with permitting and housing starts and just trying to get as many things going as possible. The ironic thing is these are also the same builders that will overbuild and throw all sorts of incentives at people because their inventory is sitting there.
Sure.
So I don't envy the economists that work at D.R. Horton, all these big companies that have to figure all that out. But they're working with so much money and so many units and so many starts at one time that they've got to kind of commit to these huge, 2,000 unit neighborhoods in Pilot Point, and then they got to trust their numbers. And then in 5 years, when they actually close it out, they're like, well, what is it? The landscape looks completely different. So
right,
a very difficult balancing act. Well, I think we did good for our first late night podcast. We're 42 minutes. We didn't necessarily rush through it, but we've been running a little bit long, so it feels good. So,
yeah.
Tabitha is off to a conference or something, so she's taking your computer, and
she is. She's doing something unique. And
yeah,
I was telling the kids. I was running joke, which it's not quite the private jet situation, but she's traveling like she's going on private jet, but she's flying commercial tomorrow. She's flying in for a lunch, and then she's flying back tomorrow night. So she's going in for the day and meeting people in North Carolina, and then flying back tomorrow night. So
well, that's fun.
Yeah. So it's one of those trips you do when you're a big dog.
I guess so. I guess the next step is the jet. So
yeah, right.
Just hop on the jet.
I did want to say and end this with a good note, because we didn't talk about it earlier when we were talking about market trends, etc. And just knowing that we're late night recording, but I wanted to talk about it because we talk about the trends as a whole on MLS, but you saw quite a bit of activity this weekend, which is great indicators of what the market's doing. And the last week you actually held Primrose Open without going on MLS, and we had a running joke about that. But this past weekend on MLS, you saw several buyers, and the trend's been that you're seeing buyers actually show up without their agent to go walk through the house and see if it's something that they like enough to bring their agent back. So I don't know if that has to do with the new NAR guidelines and real estate commission based stuff, or if it's just buyers going, you know what, I don't want to waste anyone's time. Let me just go run through it, take advantage of the open house, and see if it's something that I'm serious about. And we've seen that now in the last 4 or 5 flips that I've done. That seems to be a trend that's been pretty popular lately. So if you're a listing agent or if you're a seller, definitely hold your home, put your house up for open house because
Yeah, and people were coming out back twice. I
yeah,
saw a couple people back to back, and they were doing FaceTime with people, but they all had agents. And I do think that a lot of them legitimately had agents because those agents called you and said,
sure,
"Hey,
yeah,
my client was at your open house. We had a few questions." So yeah, it is interesting. I mean, they have, obviously as much access to technology as they ever have. And so they can easily find out when open houses are going to be. And I think some of it might just be, it's low pressure. You're just kind of out and about showing up and filtering things out to see if you even like it.
yep,
And then you get down to the actual negotiating with your agent. I don't know that it's progressed so much to where they know for a fact that the agent's not, they're going to ask for them to not make as much or something, and so they're not going to ask him to do as much. I don't
yeah,
think it's been fleshed out
yeah.
like that.
I don't know if it's that. I just wonder, is it a matter of, um, is it a matter of them kind of fishing out the new stuff on the market, right? When you're seeing stuff sit for a long time,
Yeah.
they've already seen it, right? So it just goes back to that importance of pricing it right, driving traffic to the door, and doing a great job, with the project versus, some people have that mentality. I'm just going to throw it out there to see what happens, right? And when you do that, I think you're missing so much valuable market share when you take that approach of let's just wait and see, and then you see these crazy price reductions we've been seeing, right? So I think ultimately the good news is Primrose ended up going under contract. I think approximately 4, maybe 5 days on the MLS before we went under contract.
I've I've I can't hear you anymore.
Oh, okay.
I can see you talking, and I knocked something off of my desk, and I have no ears. So this is probably a great time to say, maybe we're done.
Okay.
So I'm sure whatever you just said was really insightful, and I completely agree. Uh, but since I
Okay.
can't hear you and I can only see you laughing and looking at me disappointingly, I will say thank you for tuning in. If you haven't found us yet on social media, do that. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all the things. Come find us there, like us, subscribe to this, text a friend, tell them about it, and we would love you forever. And until next time, hope you have a great day.
See ya.